Okay, so we are back. Welcome back to video 4. We're getting ready to work on the color light sphere. So what I'm going to ask you to do is to choose a primary color. I'm using red. Your primary colors are red, blue, and yellow. You can definitely use red if you just want to keep it simple and follow along, or you can go for it and try and do your own style. This is still going to follow the same exact pattern that we used in our previous grayscale. We're just going to turn our grayscale into a color scale using light and dark values, and we're going to continue using 5 values. So white starts number 1, red is number 2, a little bit darker red is number 3. This darker red is getting a little bit cooler. If you see it in comparison, this red looks more like fire. And this one kind of calms down a little bit. It's been taken down with Alizarin Crimson, which is a cooler, more bluish red. So this gets a little bit darker. This is still darker. This is Alizarin Crimson directly from the tube. And then this is Alizarin Crimson mixed with a little bit of our black from the previous value exercise. So this is going to be my darkest dark. So I want to show you how I mix these. The white is just white from a tube, so I'm not going to show that. This color here, this is a little bit different from the color I have below. This color here is Pyrolle red, and I'm going to be mixing it with Alizarin Crimson. Okay, so all I'm going to do to get this middle value is I'm mixing dark into light. I need to move over a blob over here, clean off my palette knife, and grab some Alizarin Crimson. Now Alizarin Crimson, even though it's darker in value when you look at it, it is also more transparent. So it might take a little bit more than you think in order to make this value correct. And we're mixing dark into light, but transparency does play an important role in here because it may not be very the transparent colors are a little bit harder to get something like Pyrolle red to move. So I'm looking for a value that exists between these two colors. I may end up using all of my alizarin, which is fine because easy enough to make more. I just squeeze it out of a tube. Okay, so I've spread this out a little bit so I can have a clearer view of what the difference is between this and this. And if I spread this one out too, I'll have a better sense of how dark I need to go. So I'm going to grab a considerable amount of this to try and push this a little bit further. That's looking pretty good. Looks like a nice, cool red, kind of mid-tone. It's looking pretty good. Okay, I think I like that value. Okay, so then I've got one more to mix up, and that is taking my Alizarin Crimson to a really dark like a dark color. This is a dark value. Let me kind of spread this around so you can see it a little easier. You can see the difference between that and the Alizarin Crimson beside it, which is definitely more blue, a cool blue and lighter. See the difference between those two? So I'm going to do the same thing, but with this Pyrolle red. This other red that I use down here, I think I got it when I lived overseas in Prague, and it's just like this really neon bright, I think it's Cadmium Red Light, but I'm not going to use that. I'm going to stick up here with these because these are fresher colors. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a little bit of my Alizarin Crimson and just move it over and then clean off my palette knife so I don't mess up my black. And I'm going to grab a little bit of this black and I'm going to mix it in here just to darken this up. And that's going to be my 5th shadow color. So essentially this value scale that I made below that I pre-mixed is a reference for you, and now I'm showing you how I got it. Okay, so now I've got all 5 of my values. I'm gonna wipe off my knife here. Okay, so let's spread this out so you can see it a little easier. There it is. Okay, so now I'm gonna ignore that black over there because that's not part of it. This is getting moved to the side. We do not need that anymore because our 5 values are colorful with exception of the white. So this white down here, I'll move this up so you can see. And I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 values. And now we can go ahead and begin our color value scale, value sphere using a primary color. If you want to use blue, I would recommend cerulean blue, which is a warmer blue, and turn it toward a cooler blue by adding alizarin crimson to it. Or you can add ultramarine blue to it. That will also cool it up a bit. If you're using yellow, you can start with a cool yellow, like your primrose yellow, which is very cool. Some of you might have lemon yellow. And then as it turns, actually that would be your cool color on this end, it would start out on your warm end with more of a cadmium yellow. Okay, let's start with this red. Okay, here we are back at the easel again, and I want to talk about what we're going to be doing next. Instead of going directly into the color light sphere, which is at the bottom of the panel, instead I want to come back up to the second square down on the first panel, just above our value scales from the other day. Up here in this middle square, it says cool to warm shift. And here we're going to put down our new value scale, which is the reds. And you're going to see a shift from cool to warm, and I'm going to describe why that's important and how you use it effectively to depict how an object wraps around in space to make things look a little bit more realistic in two-dimensional form. Okay, so there's a couple of things to know about cool and warm colors. I'm going to describe this as I put down my first value that I just showed you how I mixed. I'm going to skip the white for now, and I'm just going to go directly into the red, which is Pyrolle red. It comes directly from the tube. And I'm gonna leave a little space. I'm gonna do this right about here, and I'll tell you why in a moment. So I'm making a little value scale. I'm not going to draw it out first, but this is the cool to warm shift. Okay, it's actually gonna be a warm to cool shift the way that I'm doing it, but that's okay. It's pretty much the same thing. So you can really only tell color temperatures when things are next to one another. So the same color is next to one another specifically. We know that colors can be cool and warm in feeling. The sun is hot, therefore it is a warm color. The ocean is cool, therefore it is a cool color, blues and purples, that kind of thing. But when it comes to colors, when you have something like red, when you put 2 reds together, you can immediately tell whether one is a little bit cooler and one's a little bit warmer. This is warmer in this case. It looks like it has a little bit more orange in it or a little more yellow in it. This one automatically looks like it has a little bit more blue in it. So this is getting a little bit cooler. It just so happens it's getting also a little bit darker in value. So the next thing I'm going to do, this is my second value. Remember I did the value squares. One was white, 2 was the red from the tube, 3 was the red that I mixed, and then 4 is alizarin crimson directly out of the tube. So I'm going to go ahead and put this on here. I'm going to fully load my brush, and you can see this starts getting even cooler. And it also starts going a little bit darker in value. It's a very transparent color, so it may require a couple of layers, especially if you're working in acrylic. And then the last one I'm going to put on the cool side is alizarin crimson with chromatic black. Now, chromatic black has blue in it. Another way to do this is simply to add blue. This even looks a little bit brown to me. So one thing I'm going to do just to experiment is add a little bit of Ultramarine Blue to Alizarin Crimson to see if I can get a more harmonious, cool color. So all I'm doing is taking a little bit of Alizarin Crimson and I'm mixing a tiny bit of Ultramarine Blue into it. And it's going to darken it up. And it's going to stay out of the browns because it won't be chromatic black, right? It's going to be ultramarine blue. So I'm going to put this up here as this is a learning device. This is blue with alizarin crimson instead of the chromatic black. So there's that. So this is cooler, a little bit cooler. This is just darker. This kind of looks a little bit blue, but it has brown in it. So I feel like this is going to be a nicer transition. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make this scale again with this as the final point. Let's go back to alizarin crimson. I'm going to do this in reverse. So it's going to get a little bit warmer as we go. Fully load my brush again. Make sure you're really loading your bristles up so you're not dragging dry paint. You want to make sure that you've got enough to cover and saturate. You don't want to see any white coming through. Okay, now I'm going to step down a value and I'm going to go to that mixture that we made between red and alizarin crimson. And that's this color here. And you can see it's warming up a little bit. Starting to warm up. It's a really pretty color. Okay, and then I'm going to go to the really bright red, which is the Pyrolle red directly from the tube. Very bright, highly chromatic, very high saturation color. Okay, now I'm going to move this even warmer. So remember in the video previously when I was showing you the colors, I did my scale twice. The first time I told you there was a color that I had, probably from when I lived in Prague, and it's a really bright red, very orangey red. It looks almost like Cad Red Light, but the name is in Czech, so I'm not exactly sure what it is. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some of that out directly from the tube. And this is what it looks like. And you're going to see it goes a little bit warmer. So we're getting cooler to warmer. And then I can make it even warmer by adding a little bit of yellow to it. So that same exact red, I'm going to go ahead and add yellow to it because yellow is a warm color inherently, and it's going to warm this red up even more so. And it'll still be considered a red, even though it's starting to look orange. In this scale, we'll consider it red, a really warm red. So you can see this is a shift. This goes warm to cool or cool to warm. Now, you can use this as a value scale as well, light colors to dark colors. Also, it's not unusual if you're doing a sphere or person. Let me see if I can find some blue somewhere on my palette. I have some colors put out in my palette from that painting that you keep seeing in the background. I'm not done with it yet, and I have it out there as a reminder to finish it. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you like a little example of a mini sphere and how sometimes you can use cool colors to help force turns in your objects. And when you force a turn, it just kind of helps the illusion that you're turning things in space. So let's make a little sphere first of all. This is going to be a little mini sphere up here. I'm going to do this in that like very warm color. And I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I want to get to our color sphere. I just thought while we were doing this, we can knock out two birds with one stone. So remember everything that we discussed last time. Here's the light source coming down, and we're going to be doing this again, but we're going to be doing it with five values, and we'll be using white. So here's this. Okay, so now we have our darkest dark. I'm coming in there with that blue mixture. That's our occlusion down here, and I'm just going to go ahead and put this right underneath the turn, right under the termination point as our core shadow. That's very cool. And then I'm going to take a cool color, a blue, which is not in our palette, and I'm going to put that right here just as a demonstration of how you can forcefully turn something in space. So it gives the illusion of it. Here's the color blue. I'll just give you a little example of that blue to the side so you can kind of see it. Give me 1 second. Get some of this on my brush. This is the blue that I'm using. So I'm really forcing it. It's more blue. It's cooler than any of these because it's blue. You could use purple, green, anything you really want. And you can brighten it up if you want. So it's kind of a hint at turning a form in space. And that's one of the reasons why we use cool and warm colors. Also, it creates a dynamic contrast without bringing white or black into the mix. Notice up here now, the black looks a little bit flat by comparison to this color, which is equally as dark. This just looks a little bit richer, a little bit more lush. It could be considered an infinity color. It's a dark color that goes back in space, but doesn't flatten. Rembrandt used infinity colors a lot. Okay, so now I'm going to use my, let's see, I'm going to use another value in here just to get this in. You can tell that my blue that I used is a little bit old. It's a little crusty. Okay, and then I'm going to bring this up, building up toward my highlight. And we're going to be doing this, but on a larger scale in a minute. Well, in the next video, I guess. I actually had this all planned out for the sphere, and then I just turned into doing this cool to warm shift. Okay, so here's that. And then I'm going to use a warmer color for the highlight up here. So that cool color gives like a nice turn. And now I'm going to use a really dark color, my blue mixed with alizarin crimson for that occlusion. Actually, that's not even dark enough. Here, let's see. There's the occlusion shadow right there. And then I can do my other shadow with alizarin crimson. So remember where that ends, about right there. Right there. So that's kind of how warm into cool, how that shift can work. Now I can bring a little bit of cool color up here as well to help with that turn. So next time you look at paintings, look for where things turn in space. Noses, the bridge of noses, cheeks, eyes, all of those things, they're going to have turns. And a lot of artists really like to use cool colors on the turn. Okay, so that is the cool to warm shift. Even though I did it backwards, it's really a warm to cool shift. Let's see, and I'm gonna label this too. This one is alizarin crimson plus chromatic black, and then this one is alizarin crimson plus alt blue. Okay, this is alizarin crimson. This is alizarin crimson plus a warm red. I don't mind whatever warm red you have. I have Pyrolle. You might have cadmium red medium. This is a warm red. This is a warm red plus yellow, and I'm using a warm yellow. And then this is a warm red plus more warm yellow. Okay, so it goes warmer to cooler. And then this top one is the same exact thing, with the exception of this last one has this black in it. And the black is a mixture of ultramarine blue plus burnt umber. And the burnt umber is brown, and that's what's making this look kind of flat by comparison. And I'm gonna show this up close so you can see it a little bit easier. So who knew that we were gonna finish this square today, right now in this video? Because I actually was making this value scale for my color light sphere. So I'm just gonna stay and work on that video next.